B-A-T. It's in the name.
Welcome into the Helping Healing Humor with Ben and Travis podcast. I'm Travis Creasy, and along with me is All-Pro Counselor Ben Hayes.
Howdy, partner. Always good to spend a little bit of time with you after a long day at work and do a little podcasting.
And you know, there's no telling what we will find ourselves doing between ministry, your counseling, my podcasting, social media, and of course, our wonderful wives and kids. Sometimes I ask myself, how do we do it all? And my response is usually not very well. And it's very easy to get overwhelmed, especially when you have as hard a time to say no as I do. And then I get you to come along with me or try to talk you and convince you into going. And you're usually hard to tell me no. So with that overwhelming feeling, I have come across something that has helped me focus and become more efficient. And that is called Magic Mind. I started drinking these green shots of goodness in the mornings, and I've noticed a boost of productivity throughout the day.
Yeah, Travis, Magic Mind didn't make me jittery, and I didn't have the usual mid-afternoon crash. And that's probably because Magic Mind includes something called matcha that extends the benefits of caffeine by slowing your body's ability to absorb it and prevents the spike in cortisol levels. It also includes nootropics or nootropics, which helps offset some of the symptoms of ADHD.
And anyone who knows me well, like you do, Ben, knows I need all the help I can get with that. I took my Magic Mind before my first cup of coffee in the morning, and some of the ingredients in this blast of mind juice, along with matcha, include fun things to say like ashwagandha, which I probably couldn't even say without taking the drink. And that reduces stress and anxiety. Lion's mane mushroom that reduces inflammation, prevents neural degeneration, and stimulates neural regeneration. Whitney and I tried it together, and she was able to power through a major work project in a noticeably shorter time, and it has been a game changer for us.
So does that whole neural regeneration thing mean that it makes us smarter, Travis? Because if that's the case, we could probably use a pretty big boost of it.
Oh, yeah. Sign me up for that. I need all the help I can get in that category as well.
Well, if you're like us and you want a little help in that category or some of these others that we've talked about, you can go to www.magicmind.co/healinghumor and get up to 56% off your subscription for the next 10 days with our code HealingHumor20.
We'll get right to our discussion after this short introduction.
This episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast is brought to you in partnership with benandtravis.com.
I'm Travis Creasy. That's All-Pro Counselor Ben Hayes.
What's happening?
And you're here to find out what men want. No, that the other thing men want. And maybe a little bit about what Ben has learned that women want. And so that's important because it's Valentine's Day. But before we get into that, we got two special things to speak about. One, we've got a big giveaway coming. We're going to be giving away at least a set of AirPods or some other headphones, maybe of your choosing, if you got a different version that you want. And then maybe a couple other giveaways that we're not quite ready to announce, but we will be doing a giveaway. And what I like to call this is the 100 podcast rates and reviews giveaway. And we're going to let everybody have an opportunity till Monday, the Monday after CYC. I think that's the 27th. If we can hit 100 total rates and reviews on all of our podcasts, that being the Helping Healing Humor, which if you're listening to this on the audio, especially if you're listening to Apple Podcasts, you can do that right now. You just scroll down, hit that 5 stars, and right underneath it, it says write a review. Leave us something you'd like to hear or something you love about the podcast. And if we get 100 of those on combined of the Helping Healing Humor, the good old-fashioned dislike, or the Friday refresh that Ben does such an amazing job of. If we get 100 of those, it'll unlock a giveaway of some AirPods. And if all, I'll go ahead and say this now, if all of the podcasts reach 100 apiece, that will unlock 2 other giveaways that we're not quite ready to announce yet. So if we get to that 100, we'll announce the other 2 giveaway possibilities as well. And then, of course, we have our mental health workshop that we've been working on and kind of gearing up for that's coming up. And we've got a few dates on the calendar already for that. Of course, CYC coming up. We'll be doing fun sing, all that good stuff. We're going to be going to Parkersburg, West Virginia on March 10th through the 12th. So if you're in that area, we would love for you to come see us for that weekend. Our mental health workshop. We're going to be in Decatur, Alabama for the Thrive Conference. And then May 26th through 28th, that's what I've got down right now. We're going to be in Anchorage, Alaska. And so those are the dates that are coming up that we've got booked. And then we've got open dates for 2023, Ben. We've got November 17th to the 18th, December 8th and 9th. And then in 2024, we've got some more spring dates that we've posted in other places. So if either one of those, if both of those things intrigue you and you need more info, you can follow us on social media for the giveaway information, or you can email us at hello@benandtravis.com. And we'll get back to you on those things. What do you think about all that, Ben?
Well, I think it's pretty awesome. So to sum it up, it is just go rate and review. You can do that you can find actually all this stuff at benandtravis.com. You can find the podcast there, go rate and review it. You can also find those dates that are available and that we're planned for. I believe the one in West Virginia, Travis, I think we are going to be there. Is it the 11th and 12th? I think the actual event is going to start on the 10th, but I've had something come up. My brother is retiring from the Air Force after like 27 years. So proud of him. He's going to be retiring, and we're going to go first. At least I am. I'm not sure if we're both going to make that journey, but we're going to go down to Warner Robins, Georgia, and watch his retirement ceremony, and then make a beeline to Parkersburg, West Virginia, only a short 9 or 10 hour drive away from Warner Robins, and then spend the day up there with the West Virginia folks. So I think it's going to be awesome.
It will be we were up there last spring with SWAT, and then you were on the docket to come a couple of years ago. And of course, because of the pandemic, that didn't happen. And so this is you kind of making up a date, right?
Yes, and then almost messing up a date again with my brother's retirement, but
so
we're going to make it work.
As I usually do, I just slid into the picture like, hey, I'll come too. Why not?
Glad to have you, especially now with a long drive.
So, yeah, get on those giveaways. Check us out. We'd love to come to your congregation and do a little mental health workshop for you. We've done it a couple of places, and it seems to be taken well anyways. And I always enjoy spending the weekend with Ben. As Ben mentioned, and as you know, it is Valentine's Day today. And so we're going to talk about what women and men, our wives and husbands, really want. Because you may be thinking, now, here's the problem during this on Valentine's Day. So hopefully you've taken care of the gifts. And so we're going to tell you a little bit about some things that can go year round and are really mobile. They're not really per se things or objects, although, you know, they may result in some things and objects. But I did want to talk a little bit about love and respect and love. What do you got, Ben?
When we think about, you and I and most of the people that we hang out with, we think about, well, what are the best instructions? We generally find ourselves going to the Bible for it anyway. But what a lot of people have found, even in the psychological world, in counseling and marriage counseling and all that good stuff, you know, what people have found is that the old recipe from Ephesians chapter 5 is actually pretty much what's still accurate for the way women are built and men are built. Love and respect is a big part of that. And Ephesians chapter 5, verse 33 just says that, you know, women respect their husbands and men show love or affection to their wives. And that's something that we see over and over again as being a necessary ingredient to relationships. So on today, when we're, you know, trying to figure out what can we do that's, you know, special for our spouse or for our, you know, significant other, if you're still dating, whatever the case may be, you know, what is it that they want? What is it that they need? Well, these are probably the most important things that they want and they need.
Yeah. Well, I think finding the things that travel well. And I think if you look at Ephesians 5, I know in the headline that I was reading earlier, I was kind of looking at the breakdown of the chapter, and one of the headlines was spirit guided relationships. And so the spirit God is mobile, he's going about. And so the things that he teaches us to do are things that can be done quite literally anywhere. And I think of it almost in revolutionary terms. Maybe it's because I have an N.T. Wright book that says the day the revolution began, and it's about Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection, and how kind of governments are slow moving in laws and rules and morality. And God's not waiting on the government to get it right, although it does from time to time. And so the whole chapter is really about these relationships and a practical faith and relationship every single day, not just Sundays, our own special days like Valentine's Day, but year round. And so we want to be spirit guided. We want to be word guided. And so it makes sense to us that Ephesians 5 is still pertinent and relevant. And the world, once again, is still trying to kind of catch up to that. And sometimes they catch on and they're like, man, we came up with something new. And it's like, well, it's kind of been there for a while. Yeah.
A misnomer or a misunderstanding of what respect means I guess growing up, and maybe even in the decades before you and I, but the idea of respect, and I think this kind of killed the perspective of that and has made it more difficult in years since. The idea of respect seemed like it carried with it a dominance, an attitude of lording over, being in charge, maybe not physically pushing around, at least I hope not, but sort of having their way in everything. And so I guess, I want to speak to that a little bit, let you speak to that a little bit. What respect really is. Having respect, at least in the way that we treat one another, in the way we communicate. And by the way, this goes both ways too.
Oh, yeah.
There's a need for respect, back the other direction, for men to respect women and to show that respect. It's just the way that it's shown may look a little differently than the way it's shown to men as well. So, and we'll talk about that other part, but in the way that we communicate with each other, in the way that we treat each other in public, I've had a lot of people make those statements, or heard people make those statements about their husbands. They may talk bad about them to their friends. They may say, well, I'm raising 5 kids, 6 kids. My wife doesn't say that, by the way, but I know of wives that have, where they make that joke. And sometimes I guess that's okay, but sometimes people aren't joking too much about it either. And there's just a lack of respect sometimes that's shown publicly that creates a feeling for the husband of not being good enough. And then I know a lot of times women feel that way. They can carry around that feeling of inadequacy, but men do too. And especially when they perceive that they do not garner the respect from their wives, especially the one person that they want to have respect from, they oftentimes don't get.
Yeah, I think when we come to this text, the temptation, because it is preached, and I think a lot of people, the temptation is it's kind of getting on the other person. And I think if you come to the text and you're going, oh yeah, you're supposed to love me.
Mhm.
Oh, well, you're supposed to respect me. It should be the other way. The mature aspect comes in and goes, no, this is speaking to me. I'm going to put on the big boy britches, and I'm going to love my wife. And it really becomes reciprocal. Now, obviously, we want both parties to be the bigger person, and that's the goal to get to. But when we come to Scripture, we need to read it as in, am I doing what I need to do? And I think maybe some of that comes from reading up into the context. It uses that word submit.
Mhm.
And what I think of it when I read it, I go, am I a person that is easy to submit to?
Yeah.
Or am I a person who feels like I need to throw my weight around, which I don't have a lot of, but And do I feel a need? And I felt that way in coaching. I feel that way with my kids. When I get angry in either one of those, what I'm really projecting, I'm not saying that all anger is bad, but when it's an emotional anger and not a justified anger, it's probably a secure insecurity showing like a glowing light. And so very often when I'm emotionally angry or feel disrespected, then I get and try to be domineering. And I think what it is men, we're supposed to be someone who is easy to respect and submit to and not be high maintenance. And I think it's the other way around as well to the ladies. Make it easier for us to love you. And that starts kind of with you respecting us and, vice versa.
You're right. When you say Ephesians chapter 5, it's speaking to the person who is to do the action. It's not saying husbands make your wives love you, or, wives make your husbands, wives make your husbands love you. Husbands make your wives respect you. It's not speaking in that way. It's trying to get you as the person who's responsible to do the loving, to do the respecting. And so there's when we think about the comparison in Ephesians 5 is to Christ as the head of the church. And, when we think of Jesus, there's not one bit of me that thinks that Jesus was, pushing people around and making them do what he wanted them to do. He was allowing them to follow. He was allowing them to choose him. He was also showing respect and love and nourishment and guiding. And we can talk about that a little bit later when it comes to the second part. But Jesus, as the head of the church, was giving his life for it, was sacrificing for it. The idea of the head isn't an idea of dominance or frightening leadership. It's a shepherding kind of love. And so from the other side of that, it's learning to respect the God, respecting the judgment of your husband on some level, respecting his abilities. What are the things that he does, or just simply saying thanks for what you've done. I read in the 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. He says in there's a story of a painter or a lady that's wanting her husband to paint a room. And she comes in just telling him, you gotta fix this. You got to do something about this. Tell my husband he needs to paint the room. And he said, okay, if you want my advice, here it is. I want you to, compliment your husband every time he does something around the house. Does he take out the garbage? Yes. Does he wash the dishes? Yeah, sometimes. Does he cook? Yeah, sometimes. So, I want you to compliment him. I don't want you to say a single thing again about the room. She says, I've been on him for 9 months and he's not done it yet. And he said, then don't say anything else. And she says, well, how's that going to get it done? But she leaves anyway. And within 3 weeks, she comes back and he's painted the room because she complimented him on the other things. She showed respect for him when she saw him do something. She showed respect. She complimented, she helped him and supported him. And all of a sudden he painted the room. But, those positive things, positive affirmations and encouragement goes a whole lot further than the nagging does.
Well, I have many days where it feels like I can't tie my shoes or do anything right. And I know Whitney can say thank you for something or anything gassing me up, as the kids say, and it changes the whole outlook. Like, awesome, I can do this. And so it's just a boost of confidence. And then, crazy enough, Ben, I have this desire to express my affection for her in return. And so I think once again, it's like even noticing when your spouse is not having a great day and kind of being there for them. And then it just that reciprocal, I just keep going back to that. And all of a sudden things change. The revolution begins, not from a revolutionary leader, militaristic or anger or fighting, but like you mentioned, a shepherding type of love.
Well, what always cracks me up about this passage is how people get so militant about Ephesians 5. Husbands might, some people who are, go too far with it, get sort of frustrated by it. The men, but then also, women do when they read it, because they're like, submit. What do you mean submit? But what I've pointed out at a lot of things that I've spoken at is, if you really look at it for all that passage is worth, it says, and husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. In the end, the sacrificial part, what should be, the hardest part, what should be the part that gives the most, is the husband. So husbands, we're the part that's should be sacrificing. Yeah, we give up some of the things that we should be, at least giving up some of the things that we want, that we need, so that our families, so that our wives are taken care of. And so there is a sense in which we should be getting the rawer end of that deal. I'm not sure that in decades past that's always been the truth.
Oh, no.
I don't think it has been. So therefore, but it kind of goes back again to an understanding of this passage in its correct understanding.
Yes.
People have misused this passage through the years, so therefore we're afraid to talk about it. But I think it's been misused, therefore we have avoided it. But the truth is still there. I've talked about this passage a lot of times at churches. My view of this passage changed too when I went to Bangladesh. And I was standing with some of the brothers and sisters, or the brothers, and they were, around me. And one of them said, "Is your marriage love or arranged?" And I said, "I have no idea what you're saying." And he said it again, "Is your marriage love or arranged?" And I said, "Oh, is it an arranged marriage, or is it a, I fell in love marriage?" And he said, "Yeah, that's what I'm asking." I said, "Well, we fell in love and got married." And so about half the guys I was talking to were in arranged marriages, and half of them were in, what they qualified as love marriages. And so I started looking at this passage after the fact, thinking, you know what? The people there in Bangladesh, and then also people, especially in Bible times, a lot of them were in arranged marriages. And it says, husbands, love your wives, wives, respect your husbands. And they really didn't choose each other. So love is a choice. It's a choice that you make even in a situation where you might not have liked that person, or might not have chosen that person for yourself. Not the person is a choice, but loving the person and respecting the person is a choice that you make. Marriages, the way that marriage has come to be looked at 2,000 years afterwards, is probably the result of what was written in these passages in Ephesians chapter 5.
Oh, I know that. I mean, we live in a Judeo-Christian society, and there were, for most of history, polite society, what others may call it, that's more politically correct, did not exist. And so this idea of loving your wife is kind of a thing that, as you mentioned, has been developed since this passage is written. And so it would have been a crazy thought. I mean, we equate being married as being in love, but I mean, there are all kinds of circumstances in the first century, just like now. But for a large part of history, love really wasn't maybe the big part of a marriage equation. And so the things we take for granted now and then judge previous generations on, the reason we can judge them so harshly morally is because of this new society that's been created, this melding of Greek and biblical Judeo-Christian beliefs. And so it just kind of cracks me up as a history guy to so many people that are like, "Oh, they were wrong." And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, in general, I agree, but did they know better? I mean, really all the relationships of the Bible show us the do's and don'ts. And so I'm thankful for those. And I think you've got a little bit of a list here, maybe the top 5 things for each of the sides here, if you want to run through those real quick.
When it comes to guys, we're fairly easy. So girls, if you're thinking about the 5 needs top needs of the guys, and I would say husbands and wives is who we're talking to, maybe more specifically with these, but this just kind of a throwback to the his needs, her needs from
Along those lines, Ben, I mean, if you're
Willard.
looking to get married and you're
What's that?
approaching that, these are kind of the things that you're maybe not like verbally agreeing on, but these are the things that maybe you need to think about and go, okay, this is kind of the aspect of commitment to this relationship.
That's right. And this is from Willard Harley's book, His Needs, Her Needs. And really there's 10 things. And generally speaking, and I don't know about in recent days, that book, dates back a little ways, but generally speaking, the 5 needs of men, the top 5 of those 10, they're all needs that we have, I think, on some level. But the top 5 needs of men that were listed was sexual fulfillment, recreational companionship, attractive spouse, domestic support, and admiration. So that number 5, admiration, is where that respect comes in. The other things, it's kind of funny because it's like sort of like if you just pet us and feed us, we're good. And like anybody questioned that, like we all know that that's the case. Pet us and feed us and tell us that we're awesome. So if you're really wanting to get something for your man this Valentine's Day, married couples, then there's your list of ways to treat him on some level if you want him to feel loved and respected. Those are kind of those 5 needs. Women, on the other hand, it's a little bit harder of a task. We have the harder task in that it's the
that's what we say anyway.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's what we say. But it's the things that require us to think a little deeper than we like to think, and to I guess to get into relationship mode even more so. And that is, women's top 5s generally have been said to be affection, conversation, honesty and openness, financial support, supporting them financially, and then family commitment. Those first 3, I can tell you as a counselor, that's tough for most men. Affection, honesty and openness and conversation. Whew, you might as well. I mean, yeah, I know a lot of guys who I've talked with in counseling scenarios where you could probably offer them to be affectionate, have conversation and be honest and open, or go take on, 3 or 4 wolverines, a bear, and, an alligator in the woods, and they might choose the second, just because that's just tough for guys sometimes. And I think that that's sort of the way God designed it, for us to have to dig a little deeper, make it something that's meaningful. And so I think that's why the Bible says, husbands, love your wives, show affection. That honesty, openness, conversation is what they need. So that's why he pushed us towards that.
And so, and that's the thing, like God is always going to challenge us to do the thing that doesn't usually come easy. And it's like he created us. And so he knows that. I think part of the command for us to lead as men is because we don't necessarily want to. We don't want to do that. We will. And I think that we can be good at that. We've been equipped to do that, but being equipped and wanting to do something, 2 totally different things. So I think there's an aspect to that. Most women, you don't have to tell them to lead. They're probably already doing that in some shape, form, or fashion. But like you mentioned, the love languages, quality time, physical touch, gifts, which I think Valentine's Day is probably one of those days where the gifts come in pretty handily. And then number 4, acts of service, and number 5, words of affirmation. This episode of the Helping Healing Humor with Ben and Travis podcast is brought to you by Heritage Christian University. The mission of Heritage Christian University is simple. We aim to advance the churches of Christ by equipping servants through undergraduate and graduate programs. HCU produces effective communicators of the gospel, focusing on evangelism and a commitment to Scripture. Heritage Christian University offers the following degrees: Associate of Arts in Biblical Studies, Bachelor of Arts in Biblical Studies, Master of Arts, Master of Ministry, and a Master of Divinity. HCU is accredited by the Association for Biblical Higher Education. Since 1968, Heritage Christian University has offered affordable degrees in biblical studies, allowing graduates to thrive in their ministries without the burden of loan debt. For more information about Heritage Christian University, visit www.hcu.edu. So, Ben, the 100 podcast reviews giveaway question of the day is, what are your love languages, man? Like, what are your three? You know, I don't know if he gives one or two. Mostly is the strength for some people. But
Yeah. So in Gary Chapman's 5 love languages, those that you just rattled off, he says we all give kind of what is our love language. So we try to, at least, but what we should shoot for is, learning what our spouses is and giving them what their love language is. So it's like making a good deposit. Mine, there's no doubt in my mind. I probably have 3 that are the biggest, and I would have trouble separating. Physical touch is obviously one that lines up really well with the his needs, her needs. Line up for guys. Physical touch is a big one for me. I'm a big words of affirmation and or acts of service. And I'm not so sure that that maybe words of affirmation might not even come in sometimes first for me. I like to be, and I think maybe more so in recent years. I'm not sure if these things change or whatever, but I've noticed that I look for that a little bit more so maybe than I used to. I love it when people, do something for me, service wise in some way. And so those would be the 3. You can get me gifts. I'm not going to turn them down, but that, and I like quality time with people, but I find myself, I can easily get distracted, I guess. So it's a, I like the quality time, but it's a little different. So I would probably say physical touch, acts of service, words of affirmation.
I'm definitely
What's yours?
Physical touch. You nailed that one. I'm a big hand holder. I like to cuddle. And of course, anything above that's good too. But that's some. I think words of affirmation. I think most guys, you're probably going to line up those 2. We just talked about the idea of respect. I'd say probably those are the top 2. As we close out, I do like to make things practical, right? We just told the fellas that the discussion, the showing of affection. So guys, if you're listening to this podcast, go find your significant other and ask them what their love language is. How about that? That might be a good discussion that you could start. So don't say that we never gave you anything, fellas. Okay.
Well, and I think you can go online and find those tests. The test was in the book, but it might be a good discussion starter for you to go and check those out, figure out what that is, because it just means a lot to know that not just on Valentine's Day, but that every week you're trying to do things to speak the other person's language.
Thanks for being with us for this episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast. Be sure to download our free ebook, 28 Days of Focused Living, at benandtravis.com and receive all of our Helping Healing and Humor extra content directly in your inbox. We look forward to having you join us at the same Ben and Travis time, same Ben and Travis channel.